Hey guys, tonight we're diving into the incredibly not so exciting world of Roman history, specifically the Gladius. You know, that short, pointy thing they always have in the movies. Imagine yourself back in ancient Rome, perhaps trying to figure out which toga goes with your sandals. And then, bam, you're suddenly standing in a dusty, sun-baked training ground. The air is thick with the smell of sweat, unwashed bodies, and the distant cries of what might be a very unhappy lion. You feel a rough, unrefined lump of iron in your hand. This isn't the gleaming, polished blade you've seen in the movies. No, this is a crude, brutal piece of metal, probably still covered in the last guy's fear. And trust me, if you were actually there, you'd probably last about 5 minutes before realizing that historical reenactments are far safer. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know where you're listening from tonight, and what time it is for you. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing on the sun-baked, uneven ground of an early Roman training camp. The air is thick with the fine dust kicked up by dozens of shuffling feet, and the distant, rhythmic shouts of drill sergeants echo across the field. You can feel the sweat beading on your brow, trickling down your temples, and the coarse wool of your tunic sticks uncomfortably to your skin. In your hand, you grasp something heavy, unyielding, and utterly unglamorous. This is not the sleek, elegant Gladius you might envision from Hollywood epics. No, this is an early iteration, a crude ancestor of the iconic Roman sword. Its hilt is simple, perhaps just a rough wooden block, and the blade itself feels less like a finely honed weapon and more like a glorified, sharpened spade. You flex your fingers around the grip, feeling the rough texture of the wood digging into your palm. It's unbalanced, clunky, and honestly, a little intimidating. This early Gladius isn't designed for flashy duels or intricate swordplay. It's built for one thing: getting up close and personal in a chaotic, brutal scrum. Think less ballet, more glorified brawling. You can almost hear the grunts and groans of men pushing against shields, the thud of a blunt object connecting with flesh, the desperate shouts of a unit holding its ground. This isn't about skill. It's about sheer, unadulterated brute force and the will to survive. Imagine the Romans themselves at this nascent stage. They aren't the mighty, disciplined legions yet. They're a scrappy bunch, fighting for survival against neighbors who are just as determined, and often just as well armed. Their weapons reflect this reality. The earliest forms of the gladius were likely adaptations of Iberian or Celtic swords, captured or copied from the very people they fought. It's a pragmatic approach to warfare. See what works for the other guy, and then make it better. Or at least, make it your own. You can almost see a weary blacksmith, squinting in the flickering light of his forge, trying to replicate the design of a fallen enemy's blade, probably muttering about how much easier life would be if everyone just used slingshots. You try a tentative swing. The gladius feels awkward, almost unwieldy. It's shorter than many of the swords wielded by their enemies, the long, slashing blades of the Gauls, for instance. But this shortness is its secret. In the tight confines of a shield wall, where men are pressed shoulder to shoulder, a long sword is a liability. It gets tangled. It hits your own comrades. It leaves you exposed. The gladius, however, is a stabbing weapon, designed for quick, precise thrusts into the soft bits of an enemy. A quick jab, a twist, and pull back. Efficient, brutal, effective. Think about the psychological impact of wielding such a weapon. You're not keeping your enemy at arm's length. You're inviting them into your personal space. This demands a certain kind of courage, a willingness to confront the enemy eye to eye, to feel their breath on your face. It's a visceral experience. far removed from the sanitized versions of battle we often consume. You can almost feel the adrenaline coursing through your veins, the primal instinct to survive overriding everything else. And what about the men themselves? The early Roman soldiers weren't professional warriors in the sense we understand it. They were farmers, craftsmen, citizens called upon to defend their homes and their burgeoning republic. They trained. Yes, but their lives weren't solely dedicated to the blade. So, the weapon needed to be relatively simple to master. The Gladius fits this bill perfectly. Its basic use, thrusting, is intuitive. It doesn't require years of intricate training like a finesse weapon might. You learn the fundamentals, you practice keeping your shield up, and you rely on your comrades to cover your flanks. It's a team effort, and the Gladius is just one, albeit crucial, part of that deadly synergy, part of team. Historians still debate the exact lineage of the earliest Gladius forms. Was it purely Iberian? Or did other influences play a part? The truth is, early Roman weapon development was likely a messy, organic process, a constant evolution based on battlefield experience and available resources. There wasn't a single eureka moment where the perfect Gladius sprang into existence. It was a gradual refinement, driven by necessity and the hard-won lessons of countless skirmishes. Imagine the blacksmiths of this era, hunched over their forges, their faces grimed with soot, sweat stinging their eyes. They aren't artists, they're pragmatic craftsmen. Their goal isn't beauty, but functionality. Each strike of the hammer, each heating and cooling cycle, is about creating a blade that won't break, that will hold an edge, that will pierce armor and bone. The iron itself would have been of varying quality, making the smith's job even harder. You can almost smell the acrid smoke from the charcoal, hear the rhythmic clink-clank of metal on metal, a sound that would have been the soundtrack to Roman expansion. You picture the early Roman legions, not in their gleaming segmented armor, but in simpler, less protective gear, leather, perhaps bronze breastplates, and those formidable shields. The Gladius was designed to complement these defenses. It was short enough to be maneuvered behind the large scutum, that big rectangular shield, allowing the soldier to stab out from behind its protection, then quickly retreat. It was a deadly dance, a grim ballet of shield and blade, where inches mattered more than miles. One often overlooked detail about these early gladii is their sheer resilience. They weren't meant to be disposable. A weapon like this, forged with significant effort and cost, was a valuable asset. A soldier would have meticulously cared for his gladius, sharpening its edge, oiling the blade, and checking the hilt for looseness. It was an extension of himself, a tool for survival, and a symbol of his duty. You can almost see the soldier, after a long march or a grueling battle, carefully cleaning the grime and grit from his blade, perhaps even whispering a silent thanks for its continued service. It's not just a piece of metal. It's a companion in the chaos. And then there's the surprising simplicity of its maintenance. Unlike longer, more complex swords, the Gladius was relatively easy to resharpen in the field. A rough stone, a bit of effort, and you could bring back a serviceable edge. This practical aspect made it ideal for a military machine that needed to operate far from its supply lines, deep in hostile territory. You might even find yourself, as you're gripping this early Gladius, thinking about how many times this very blade, or one exactly like it, was sharpened on the gritty soil of a foreign land, ready for the next encounter. The early Gladius wasn't just a weapon, it was a testament to Roman ingenuity, resilience, and their brutal effectiveness on the battlefield. You're no longer on the rough training ground. Instead, you find yourself in the smoky, clamorous heart of a Roman forge. The air vibrates with the rhythmic thump-thump-thump of a heavy hammer striking metal, a sound that resonates deep in your chest. The heat is oppressive, a tangible presence that makes your skin prickle and sweat immediately bead on your forehead. Before you, a brawny smith, stripped to the waist, his muscles rippling with each swing, works a glowing piece of steel. This is where the legend of the Gladius truly begins to take shape, where mere iron is transformed into a precision instrument of war. You watch, captivated, as the smith pulls a fiery orange bar of metal from the glowing coals of the forge. Sparks shower around him like tiny, fleeting stars, briefly illuminating the grime and sweat on his face. The air smells of sulfur, charcoal, and the unique, pungent aroma of hot metal. He places the incandescent bar on an anvil, a solid, unyielding block of iron that has absorbed the echoes of countless hammer blows. Each strike is deliberate, powerful, shaping the metal with a fierce intent. You can almost feel the vibrations traveling up from the ground through your feet. This isn't just brute force. It's an art form born of necessity. The smith is not simply beating metal, he's coaxing it, persuading it to yield to his will, to align its internal structure. He's performing a delicate dance between heat and force, knowing precisely when to strike and when to return the nascent blade to the ravenous flames. This process, known as forging, is crucial. It purifies the metal, expelling impurities, and compacts the grain, making the steel stronger, more resilient, less prone to snapping under the stresses of battle. You might even find yourself wondering if the smiths themselves ever considered the incredible journeys these blades would undertake, or the lives they would end or save. The early Roman metallurgists didn't have the sophisticated tools or scientific understanding we possess today. They relied on centuries of accumulated empirical knowledge, passed down through generations of smiths. They knew that certain types of iron ore, when smelted in particular ways, produced metal with different characteristics. They understood the subtle color changes in the glowing steel that indicated the right temperature for working. It was a craft, a trade secret, and a fundamental pillar of Roman military might. Historians still debate the exact composition of the steel used in the most effective gladii, with some suggesting advanced methods of carbonization were employed, creating a surprisingly high-quality edge. As the smith continues, the form of the blade slowly emerges. The thick, fiery bar gradually elongates, thins, and begins to take on the familiar leaf-like shape of the gladius. You see the tang, the narrow extension of the blade that will eventually be fitted into the hilt, being carefully hammered into shape. Every detail matters, from the curvature of the edges to the precise tapering of the tip. A well-balanced gladius was paramount. A blade that was too heavy at the point would be slow and cumbersome. One too light would lack the necessary force for a decisive thrust. It was a delicate equilibrium, achieved through countless hours of trial and error. Once the basic shape is achieved, the blade is reheated and then plunged into a quenching bath. You hear a dramatic sizzle and see a cloud of steam erupt, momentarily obscuring the smith. This is the hardening process, where the rapid cooling transforms the internal structure of the steel, making it incredibly hard. But hardness comes at a cost: brittleness. A blade that is too hard will snap like glass upon impact. So, the smith must then undertake the crucial step of tempering. The blade is carefully reheated to a much lower temperature, often by eye, watching for subtle color changes on the surface of the metal, perhaps a straw yellow or a purplish blue. This process reduces the brittleness, making the steel tough and resilient, while still retaining its ability to hold a sharp edge. It's a fine line, a testament to the smith's skill and experience. One wrong move, a moment too long in the heat, and the blade is ruined, destined to become scrap metal rather than a soldier's trusted companion. You can almost feel the intense focus of the smith, his brow furrowed in concentration, as he carefully monitors the changing hues of the steel. Beyond the blade itself, the hilt and scabbard were also critical components. The hilt, often made of wood or bone, needed to provide a firm, comfortable grip. It was usually secured to the tang with rivets, ensuring it wouldn't come loose during the chaos of battle. And the scabbard, often crafted from wood and covered in leather, perhaps adorned with bronze or iron fittings, served not only to protect the blade, but also to allow the soldier to draw it quickly and efficiently. Imagine trying to draw a weapon in the thick of combat if it snagged or stuck in its sheath. The Gladius was designed for rapid deployment, a swift transition from resting at the hip to engaging the enemy. The Roman army's demand for gladii would have been immense. Tens of thousands of these swords were needed to equip the legions. This meant not just individual smiths working in their small shops, but likely large-scale workshops, almost proto-factories, dedicated to mass-producing these essential weapons. You can envision rows upon rows of anvils, the constant din of hammers, the glow of countless forges illuminating the night sky, a testament to the industrial might of Rome. This wasn't artisanal production for a few elite warriors. This was equipping an entire army that spanned an empire. One fascinating, yet less known detail, is the quality control that must have been in place. While we don't have detailed records of Roman military inspections of individual weapons, it's clear that a faulty gladius could cost a soldier his life, and potentially jeopardize an entire unit. There must have been standards, perhaps informal at first, for the hardness, sharpness, and balance of the blades. A legionary would have trusted his life to his gladius, and that trust was built on the meticulous work of the smiths. It makes you think about the immense responsibility resting on the shoulders of these craftsmen, whose silent labor forged the very instruments of Rome's dominion. The process of forging a gladius was more than just metallurgy. It was an embodiment of Roman pragmatism and efficiency. Every step, from the selection of the raw ore to the final sharpening of the blade, was geared towards creating a weapon that was durable, effective, and relatively easy to mass-produce. It wasn't the fanciest sword, nor the most ornate, but it was perfectly suited for its purpose to be wielded by a disciplined legionary in the tightly packed formations of Roman warfare. The gladius wasn't just made, it was engineered for conquest. You're no longer in the forge. Instead, you're marching. The rhythmic thud, thud, thud of heavy hobnailed boots on a Roman road echoes in your ears. A steady, hypnotic beat that accompanies every step. The sun beats down relentlessly. Dust coats your tunic, and the metallic tang of sweat is ever present. Strapped to your right hip, or sometimes carried in hand for immediate readiness, is your gladius. It's not a showpiece. It's a tool, a vital extension of your arm, a constant reminder of your purpose. You are a Roman legionary, and this short sword is the instrument of conquest. Feel the familiar weight of the gladius against your thigh as you march. It's perfectly balanced, not so heavy as to be cumbersome during long marches, yet substantial enough to deliver a devastating blow. The hilt, perhaps made of carved wood or bone, fits snugly in your grip, molded to the contours of your hand from countless hours of training and patrol. The scabbard, likely wooden and covered in hardened leather, keeps the blade protected, yet allows for a swift, fluid draw. This weapon is an integral part of your kit, as essential as your shield, helmet, and pilum, that heavy javelin you're probably also lugging around. Consider the Roman army itself, a meticulously organized and disciplined fighting force unlike any the world had seen. The gladius was not designed to be wielded by individual heroes engaging in grand duels. It was the weapon of the legion, a collective, highly efficient killing machine. You are part of a contubernium, then a centuria, then a cohort, and finally, a legion. Your strength comes from unity, from the shield wall, from the relentless advance. And the gladius is perfectly suited for this style of warfare. Imagine the testudo formation, the famous tortoise shell of shields. You're packed in, shoulder to shoulder. Your scutum, large rectangular shield protecting your front and sides, while the men next to you cover your exposed flanks. In this incredibly tight, almost claustrophobic formation, a long sword would be useless. You'd jab your comrades, get tangled, become a liability. But the gladius, with its compact length, is ideal. You can thrust it out, aiming for the vulnerable groin, belly, or throat of an enemy pressed against your shield, then quickly retract it, maintaining the integrity of the formation. It's a brutal, efficient, almost mechanical action. The Roman approach to combat with the gladius was deceptively simple. Maintain the shield wall, push forward, and stab. This wasn't a fencing match. It was an exercise in controlled aggression and relentless pressure. The goal was to break the enemy's lines, to create gaps, and then to exploit those weaknesses with brutal efficiency. The short, sharp point of the gladius was designed for piercing, for puncturing through linen armor, thick hides, or even the gaps in metal plating. It was about delivering fatal or incapacitating wounds quickly, allowing you to move on to the next threat. Think about the psychological impact on the enemy. They faced not a loose collection of individual warriors, but a seemingly impenetrable, disciplined block of men, each with a deadly, stubby blade extending from behind a formidable shield. The Romans didn't slash wildly. They advanced with grim determination, their gladii appearing and disappearing with deadly precision. This systematic, relentless pressure must have been utterly terrifying, far more demoralizing than individual acts of heroism. The gladius underwent several evolutionary stages throughout its long service life. The earliest form, often called the Gladius hispaniensis, Spanish gladius, was broader and had a more pronounced waist or curve in the blade, reflecting its Iberian origins. Later, the Mainz gladius emerged, a slightly shorter, wider blade with a more parallel edge, becoming highly popular. Finally, the Pompei gladius became the most common type, a very straight-edged, parallel-sided blade, often with a shorter point. Each iteration was a subtle refinement, driven by battlefield experience and logistical considerations. Historians still debate which specific design was truly the most effective in every scenario, but the core function remained the same: a close-quarters stabbing weapon. One fascinating, often overlooked detail is the versatility of the gladius in practical combat. While primarily a stabbing weapon, its broad, sharpened edges allowed for cutting and slashing when necessary. Imagine fighting an enemy who manages to get inside your shield guard. A quick cut to an exposed arm or leg could disarm or disable them. It wasn't just a poker. It was a short, sharp all-rounder for the brutal realities of close combat. You could feel its balance shift ever so slightly as you envisioned rotating your wrist for a quick, defensive slice. The training for legionaries would have been relentless and repetitive, focusing on the fundamentals: maintaining formation, using the shield effectively, and delivering short, powerful thrusts with the gladius. There were no fancy maneuvers, no intricate spins. It was about drilling the muscle memory until the actions became instinctive, even under the immense pressure of battle. You can almost hear the centurion's barked commands, the thwack of wooden swords against training dummies, the endless repetitions of thrust, withdraw, guard. The success of the Roman legions, and by extension the gladius, was not just about the weapon itself, but about the system in which it operated. The Romans were masters of logistics, organization, and discipline. They built roads, established supply lines, and drilled their soldiers relentlessly. The gladius was merely one part of this highly optimized machine, but a crucial one. Without its effectiveness in close-quarters combat, the Roman shield wall, the cornerstone of their tactical prowess, would have been far less formidable. Think about the sheer scale of this deployment. Thousands upon thousands of gladii were carried across continents, from the deserts of North Africa to the cold forests of Britannia. Each one represented a soldier, a part of the relentless Roman advance. It's a silent testimony to the effectiveness of this design that it remained the primary sidearm of the Roman infantry for centuries, even as other cultures developed longer, more specialized swords. The image of the Roman legionary, shield raised, gladius poised, is an iconic one for a reason. It represents the unwavering discipline, the pragmatic brutality, and the sheer military might that built an empire. The gladius wasn't flashy. It wasn't romanticized in its own time like some later knightly swords. It was a tool, a workhorse, a weapon, forged for one purpose: to allow the Roman legionary to conquer. And for centuries, it did just that, carving out an empire with every precise, deadly thrust. You're no longer marching, you're here. The roar of the crowd is a deafening wave of sound, washing over you, drowning out your own thoughts. The hot sun beats down, making the sand of the arena shimmer. The air is thick with the smells of sweat, dust, cheap wine, and the metallic tang of fresh blood. Your heart hammers against your ribs, a frantic drumbeat in your ears. In your hand, a gladius feels strangely light, yet utterly real. This is the arena, and you are a gladiator. Look around you. The towering walls of the Colosseum seem to scrape the sky, filled with thousands upon thousands of screaming spectators. Every eye is on you. You can almost feel the collective breath of the crowd, waiting, watching. This isn't a battlefield where you fight for Rome. This is a stage where you fight for your life, for entertainment, for a chance at freedom, or perhaps just for another day. The gladius you hold is no longer a tool of conquest for an empire, but a desperate instrument of survival for one man. Feel the grip of the hilt. It's probably worn smooth from countless hands, from countless bouts. The blade itself, meticulously sharpened, gleams menacingly. Unlike the legionary's gladius, which was part of a cohesive unit's arsenal, your gladius is your life. There's no shield wall to protect you, no comrade to cover your flank. It's just you, your opponent, and this short, deadly blade. And the gladiatorial games were a spectacle, a brutal form of public entertainment. The types of gladiators and their weaponry varied wildly, but the gladius was a common sight, particularly for the murmillo, hoplomachus, and sometimes the secutor. These gladiators often fought opponents with different armament, creating exciting and unpredictable matchups. Imagine the clash of a heavily armed murmillo, shield held high, gladius ready, facing a nimble retiarius with his net and trident. It was a deadly chess game, each weapon with its strengths and weaknesses. When you engage, the movements are swift, decisive. Your gladius is designed for quick, powerful thrusts, aimed at vulnerable points. You might feint with your shield, creating an opening, then unleash a rapid stab into an armpit, the groin, or the throat. There's no room for hesitation, no time for elaborate flourishes. Every move is about efficiency, about ending the fight before you become the casualty. The crowd's roar intensifies with every parry, every lunge. Think about the sheer physical demands. You are likely heavily muscled, trained rigorously, and fed a specific diet, often vegetarian, to build a layer of subcutaneous fat that could offer some protection against shallow cuts. But no amount of training can fully prepare you for the primal fear, the adrenaline surge, and the desperate struggle for breath in the arena. Your gladius becomes an extension of your desperate will to live. One fascinating, often overlooked aspect of gladiatorial combat was the refereeing. Yes, even in this brutal spectacle. There were rules and officials known as summa rudis or secunda rudis. They would ensure fair play, break up stalemates, and ultimately, determine if a gladiator had surrendered or was too injured to continue. This meant that while the combat was lethal, it wasn't a free-for-all. There was a structured savagery to it, and your gladius was wielded within these bounds, albeit loosely enforced. The crowd's verdict was paramount. If you fought bravely, even if you lost, you might be granted mercy, signaled by the thumb gesture. The exact meaning of police verso, thumb turned, is still debated by historians, but it generally meant life or death. Your gladius was your plea for survival, your performance in this deadly dance. A well-placed thrust, a brave stand, could win you favor, or at least a temporary reprieve. The very design of the gladius was ideal for the arena. Its short length allowed for rapid changes in direction and close quarters infighting. Imagine trying to wield a long, unwieldy sword in a tight space against an opponent equally determined to kill you. The gladius provided a balance of offensive power and defensive maneuverability, allowing a skilled gladiator to both attack and defend effectively, often in conjunction with a shield. Consider the training. Gladiators weren't just given a sword and thrown into the arena. They underwent intensive training in ludi gladiatorial schools under the strict supervision of a lanista. You would have spent countless hours practicing with wooden swords rudis, drilling movements, learning how to strike, how to parry, how to use your body and shield to their maximum effect. The gladius would have become an extension of your arm, its weight and balance as familiar as your own heartbeat. The visual impact of the gladius in the arena cannot be understated. As light glinted off its polished blade, it was a symbol of both death and potential glory. It was a weapon designed to be seen, to be feared, to be the instrument by which destinies were decided in a heartbeat. The very sight of a gladiator drawing his gladius would have sent a shiver of anticipation through the crowd. Historians still debate the true frequency of death in the arena, while Hollywood often portrays it as a bloodbath with near-guaranteed fatalities. Archaeological evidence and historical texts suggest that while deadly, many gladiators survived multiple bouts. The cost of training and maintaining a gladiator was high, so killing them off every time wasn't always economically sensible for the lanista. Your gladius, therefore, was not just a tool for killing, but also a tool for surviving, for earning your freedom, for simply living to fight another day. You are a performer, whether you like it or not, and your gladius is your main prop. The way you wield it, the way you move, the force you put behind each strike, it's all part of the show. And in this brutal theater, the audience demands a compelling performance. Your life literally depends on it. The arena is a crucible, and your gladius is the fire that forges your fate. Every parry, every thrust, every desperate lunge is a silent prayer for survival whispered through steel. You're no longer in the roaring arena, nor are you marching with the legions. Instead, you're in a quiet armory, perhaps, or the study of a Roman military engineer, examining the gladius up close. Not as a weapon of war or spectacle, but as a masterpiece of functional design. You're holding it, turning it over in your hands, feeling the subtleties that made it so incredibly effective. This isn't just a sharp stick, it's a precisely engineered instrument, and its true secrets lie in the details you might never notice at first glance. Run your thumb along the grip. It's not perfectly round or flat. Instead, it often has subtle contours, sometimes even finger grooves, designed to fit snugly into the hand. This seemingly minor detail is crucial. In the chaos of combat, with hands slick with sweat or blood, a secure grip is paramount. A sword slipping from your grasp could mean instant death. This ergonomic design wasn't just for comfort. It was a matter of life and death, allowing for maximum control and preventing fatigue during prolonged engagements. You can almost feel how your hand would mold to it, providing an almost intuitive sense of control. Now, consider the blade profile. While the gladius is universally known as a short sword, its precise shape varied significantly across its different types: Hispaniensis, Mainz, Pompeii. The gladius hispaniensis, for instance, had a distinct waist or constriction along its length, giving it a leaf-like appearance. This shape wasn't merely aesthetic. It likely contributed to a forward-biased balance, aiding in chopping and slashing blows, while still maintaining its excellent thrusting capability. In contrast, the later Pompeii gladius had almost perfectly parallel edges and a more abrupt triangular tip, optimizing it almost entirely for thrusting. This subtle shift in design reflects evolving Roman tactics and a deeper understanding of close-quarters combat. One fascinating, and often overlooked, detail is the pommel and guard. These weren't just decorative. The pommel, the weighted cap at the end of the hilt, counterbalanced the blade, contributing significantly to the sword's overall balance and maneuverability. Without it, the sword would feel blade-heavy and unwieldy. The guard, or crossguard, protected the wielder's hand from enemy blades or shields. While relatively small on the gladius compared to later medieval swords, it was sufficient for its purpose, deflecting blows and preventing the hand from sliding onto the sharp blade during a powerful thrust. You might notice the slight wear marks on a surviving gladius's guard, silent testament to blows it successfully deflected. Think about the materials. While primarily iron or steel, The quality and specific composition could vary wildly depending on the source and the skill of the smith. The best Roman steel, likely produced through a laborious process of repeatedly folding and hammering the metal similar to pattern welding, though not always as ornate, would have resulted in incredibly strong and resilient blades. The hilt, often made of wood, could be reinforced with bronze or bone plates for durability. The scabbard, usually wood covered in leather, was sometimes adorned with brass or iron fittings, not just for looks, but for structural integrity and preventing wear. This blend of materials, each chosen for its specific properties, speaks to a sophisticated, if empirical, understanding of engineering. Another less-known fact about the Gladius is the variations in blade length. While generally short, there wasn't a single, rigid standard. Archaeological finds show gladii ranging from around 40 centimeters 16 inches to over 60 centimeters 24 inches in blade length. This could be due to individual preference. The specific duties of a legionary, a cavalryman might prefer a slightly longer blade than an infantryman, or simply regional differences in manufacturing. This flexibility suggests a pragmatic approach to weapon design, allowing for adaptations without compromising the core functionality of the weapon. The Roman emphasis on the thrust as the primary attack method influenced every aspect of the gladius's design. The short, broad blade and acute point were perfect for piercing. Unlike slashing, which requires more space and energy, a thrust delivers concentrated force to a small area, making it incredibly effective against unarmored or lightly armored opponents. It was also easier to control in tight formations and required less broad movement, allowing the soldier to maintain his shield wall integrity. This focus on the thrust made the gladius a deadly scalpel in the hands of a disciplined legionary. Historians still debate the specific forging techniques used to achieve the legendary durability of some Roman blades. Was it a form of primitive Wootz steel? Were specific types of iron ore, perhaps those with natural alloys, sought out? The lack of detailed written records means much of this remains a subject of academic speculation, pieced together from archaeological evidence and experimental archaeology. You can almost feel the weight of that unsolved mystery as you turn the gladius over in your hand. The overall balance of the gladius was critical for its ease of use. A well-balanced sword feels light in the hand, allowing for rapid recovery after a strike and reducing fatigue. The point of balance was often just a few inches from the guard, making it agile and responsive, perfect for the quick, repetitive thrusts required in Roman combat. You might try to find the balance point yourself, feeling the subtle shift in weight. The gladius was not a weapon that relied on elaborate techniques or flashy movements. Its genius lay in its simplicity and its perfect suitability for the Roman fighting style, disciplined, relentless, and brutally efficient. Every curve, every dimension, every material choice was made with one goal in mind: to create the most effective close-quarters combat weapon for the Roman legionary. It wasn't just a sword. It was an extension of Rome's military doctrine, a physical embodiment of their approach to war, and in its unadorned, functional design lies its true, formidable beauty. You're stepping away from the training grounds and the dust of battle, moving into a quieter, perhaps more surprising, corner of ancient Roman life. Your gladius, this instrument of war, suddenly takes on different meanings. It's no longer just about combat. It's about status, ceremony, and even the mundane realities of Roman society. You begin to see its form echoed in places you wouldn't expect, revealing a fascinating duality to this iconic blade. Imagine yourself in a Roman home, perhaps a wealthy domus. You might see miniature replicas of the gladius, beautifully crafted in bronze or even precious metals, displayed as symbols of martial virtue or ancestral pride. These aren't weapons for fighting. They are votive offerings or decorative items, commemorating military successes or simply showcasing a family's connection to the Roman legions. It's a subtle reminder that even in peacetime, the image of Roman military might was ever present. You can almost feel the cool, smooth surface of a bronze gladius miniature, its sharpness symbolic rather than functional. Consider the symbolism of the gladius. For a Roman citizen, especially during the Republic and early Empire, military service was a civic duty and a source of immense pride. The gladius, as the quintessential Roman weapon, became a powerful symbol of Roman identity, discipline, and conquest. It represented the courage of the legionary, the unwavering resolve of the Republic, and the might of the empire. When a general was celebrated with a triumph, the sight of legions marching, their gladii at their hips, was a potent visual representation of Rome's power. It wasn't just a sword, it was the embodiment of Romanitas. Beyond pure symbolism, the gladius also played a role in ceremonial contexts. While not frequently used in religious rituals, its presence in military parades, victory celebrations, and even funerals of esteemed soldiers would have been common. Imagine a Roman funeral procession, where the deceased's armor and weapons, including his gladius, might have been carried or displayed as a testament to his service and valor. It's a somber, respectful use of an object primarily associated with violence, highlighting its deeper cultural significance. One lesser-known detail is the use of the gladius in Roman legal and judicial practices. While primarily a military weapon, it could, in rare and specific instances, be associated with the power of life and death held by Roman magistrates. The imperium power to command of a magistrate was sometimes symbolized by the presence of lictors carrying fasces bundles of rods that sometimes included an axe. But the very concept of ius gladii, right of the sword, represented the ultimate judicial authority to execute condemned criminals. This meant the sword, in its broader sense, became a chilling emblem of state power and justice, even if it wasn't always a literal gladius used for such purposes. Think about the artisans who crafted these non-military gladii. They weren't blacksmiths forging for war, but perhaps skilled bronze workers, or even jewelers, creating exquisite miniature versions, or crafting ornate hilts and scabbards for high-ranking officers, or as prestigious gifts. These were works of art, demonstrating a different kind of mastery than the forge. You can almost hear the delicate tapping of a chisel on bone or the precise placement of silver inlay on a wooden hilt. Historians still debate the extent to which the gladius was solely a military weapon versus having broader societal use in a practical sense. While it was clearly not a common self-defense tool for everyday citizens, knives were far more practical. The constant state of low-level conflict and the potential for brigandage meant that many Romans would have been familiar with its function, even if they didn't personally carry one. The line between civilian and military was often blurred in early Roman society, where every male citizen was, in theory, a potential soldier. The gladius even found its way into art and literature. It appears on countless Roman reliefs, statues, and coins, proudly depicted as the weapon that forged an empire. Roman writers and poets would invoke its image to symbolize bravery, power, and the martial spirit of Rome. These artistic representations often romanticize the blade, perhaps making it appear more elegant or more imposing than the pragmatic military versions. You might recall seeing its familiar outline on an ancient marble frieze, forever etched in stone. Even in civilian life, the discipline instilled by the military, and by extension, the gladius, had a profound impact. Returning veterans, accustomed to the structured life of the legions, brought that order and discipline back to their farms and towns. The very culture of Rome was shaped by its martial prowess, and the gladius stood as its most recognizable symbol. It was a silent, ever-present reminder of the sacrifices made and the power held. So, the gladius, this formidable weapon, truly extended its influence far beyond the battlefield. It became woven into the fabric of Roman identity, appearing in homes as symbols, in ceremonies as emblems of valor, and even abstractly in the very language of Roman law and power. It was more than just steel. It was a cultural icon, a silent witness to both the brutality and the grandeur of the Roman world. You're no longer surrounded by the grandeur of Roman society or the clanging of the forge. Instead, you're observing a subtle, slow shift, almost imperceptible at first, across the vast landscape of the Roman Empire. The familiar, compact form of the gladius is beginning to recede, yielding its dominance to other, longer, more imposing blades. This isn't a sudden revolution. It's a gradual decline, a testament to evolving military tactics, changing enemies, and the inevitable flow of time. Imagine a Roman legionary in the late 2nd or early 3rd century CE. His gladius might still be at his hip, but increasingly, you're seeing a different kind of sword, the Spatha. This longer, often double-edged sword, typically between 70 centimeters and 1 meter 28 to 39 inches in length, is becoming more prevalent. Why the shift? The answer lies in the changing nature of warfare. The Roman Empire was no longer just fighting tightly packed infantry battles against similarly armed adversaries. They were increasingly encountering enemies who favored cavalry, like the Sarmatians with their long lances and swords, or Germanic tribes who wielded longer, slashing blades. In these more open engagements, particularly against mounted opponents or in skirmishes where lines weren't as rigidly maintained, the short reach of the gladius became a disadvantage. The Spatha, with its greater reach, allowed for more effective cuts from horseback and better defense against longer enemy weapons. You can almost feel the frustration of a legionary trying to reach a mounted foe with his short gladius, only to be outmaneuvered. Think about the evolving role of Roman cavalry. As the empire expanded and encountered more sophisticated horse-based armies, Roman cavalry became more crucial. The gladius, while compact, was less suited for cavalry combat than a longer sword that could deliver powerful slashing blows while maintaining distance from a swift opponent. The Spatha offered this advantage, becoming the standard weapon for Roman horsemen. As cavalry gained prominence, so too did the weapon that best served its needs. The very tactics of the legions began to adapt. While the shield wall remained fundamental, battles were becoming less about pushing formations and more about fluid engagements, skirmishes, and even individual duels on a larger scale. The longer Spatha allowed for more versatile swordplay, providing both reach and cutting power that the gladius, primarily a thrusting weapon, couldn't match in these new scenarios. You can almost hear the changing rhythms of battle, less thud-thud stab and more slice-slash-parry. One often overlooked detail in this transition is the influence of barbarian auxiliary troops. The Roman army increasingly relied on non-Roman auxiliary forces, many of whom came from cultures that traditionally favored longer swords. As these units were integrated and their fighting styles influenced Roman military doctrine, the preference for the Spatha likely grew. Roman pragmatism meant adopting what worked, even if it came from their enemies or allies. Historians still debate the precise timeline and the degree to which these external influences truly drove the shift from gladius to Spatha. But the connection is undeniable. The logistical challenges of a vast empire also played a role. While the gladius was relatively standardized, the proliferation of different regional styles and the increasing reliance on local workshops may have led to variations in quality and design. The Spatha, perhaps simpler to forge in longer lengths and less reliant on the specialized tempering required for a short, stiff thrusting blade, might have become easier to produce on a massive scale. Imagine the discomfort of a legionary who had trained his entire life with a gladius suddenly being issued a longer, heavier Spatha. There would have been a period of adaptation, of retraining, of learning new muscle memory. This wasn't a quick change. It was a slow, generational shift, reflecting the changing nature of the empire itself. The empire was no longer just about offensive conquest. It was increasingly about defensive holding actions along vast, permeable borders. The gladius didn't disappear overnight. It likely remained in use by some units, or for specific roles, for centuries. There would have been a period of overlap, where both the gladius and the Spatha were present on the battlefield. But its era as the primary weapon, the quintessential Roman sword, was drawing to a close. Its reign, which had seen the rise and expansion of the greatest empire of the ancient world, was slowly fading. This decline of the Gladius wasn't a sign of Roman weakness, but rather an indication of their continued adaptability. The Romans were practical. If a new weapon or new tactic proved more effective against changing threats, they would adopt it. The Spatha became the new workhorse, a testament to the empire's ability to evolve and survive in a shifting geopolitical landscape. The whispers of the Gladius's dominance were growing fainter, replaced by the longer, swifter arc of the Spatha. It's a poignant reminder that even the most iconic symbols of power can eventually yield to the relentless march of progress and changing circumstances. You're no longer in the swirling dust of the battlefield or the ceremonial halls of Rome. Instead, you're in the quiet stillness of an archaeological dig site. Centuries later, the air smells of damp earth and ancient secrets. Before you, a careful team of excavators brushes away layers of soil, revealing fragments of the past. And then, there it is, the unmistakable outline of a gladius, emerging from its long slumber beneath the earth. This is where the story of the gladius takes on a new chapter, one of rediscovery and scientific investigation. Imagine the thrill, the quiet reverence, as a perfectly preserved gladius blade is carefully unearthed. Often, these finds are made in surprising locations buried with a soldier in a forgotten grave, lost in the muddy depths of a river where a bridge once stood, or even deliberately hidden in a cache during times of rebellion or invasion. Each discovery is a tiny window into the past, offering tangible evidence of a weapon that shaped history. You can almost feel the faint chill of the ancient metal as it is exposed to the modern air. The condition of these unearthed gladii varies wildly. Some are little more than rust-eaten fragments, barely recognizable, while others, thanks to specific soil conditions like bog iron or volcanic ash, are remarkably preserved, sometimes even with remnants of their wooden or bone hilts intact. These well-preserved examples are invaluable to historians and archaeologists, offering direct insight into Roman metallurgy, craftsmanship, and even the subtle variations in design over time. Think about what a single gladius can tell us. Its length, its weight, the way the tang is attached to the hilt, all these details provide clues about manufacturing techniques and the intended use. Scientific analysis can even determine the composition of the metal, revealing the types of iron ore used and the heat treatment methods employed by Roman smiths. This is how we piece together the story of its evolution, from the broad Hispaniensis to the straighter Pompeii types. One fascinating, yet less discussed, aspect of these discoveries is the context of the find. Where was it found? What other artifacts were nearby? Was it part of a soldier's burial? Goods, indicating personal attachment? Was it part of a hoard, perhaps buried in haste? Or was it lost in the heat of battle, offering a grim testament to a specific historical engagement? Each piece of context adds layers to the story of the individual blade and the broader Roman world. Historians still debate the exact reasons for certain mass graves of weapons found at battle sites. Were they abandoned, or collected and then lost? Consider the archaeological techniques involved. It's not just about digging, it involves meticulous mapping, careful documentation of every layer of soil, and the use of specialized tools to avoid damaging fragile artifacts. Once unearthed, the gladius undergoes a process of conservation, often involving electrochemical treatments to remove rust and stabilize the metal, preventing further decay. This painstaking work ensures that these historical treasures can be studied and preserved for future generations. You can almost hear the soft brushes and the careful murmurs of the archaeologists as they work. Beyond individual finds, the sheer number of gladii that have been unearthed speaks volumes about the scale of Roman military production. Thousands have been recovered across the former Roman Empire, from Britain to the Middle East, from Spain to Germany. This vast distribution underscores the standardization and effectiveness of this weapon. Truly, the workhorse of the Roman army for centuries. The rediscovery of the gladius has also fueled experimental archaeology. Modern blacksmiths and historical reenactors meticulously recreate gladii using ancient techniques, testing their durability, sharpness, and effectiveness in simulated combat scenarios. This hands-on approach provides invaluable insights into how these weapons were actually wielded and their true capabilities. You might even imagine the clang of a modern hammer on a newly forged blade, echoing the ancient past. These archaeological finds allow us to move beyond written accounts, which can sometimes be biased or incomplete, and touch the physical reality of the Roman world. A gladius discovered in a frontier fort tells a tale of vigil, of defense, of constant readiness. One found in a deep well might speak of a forgotten accident or a discarded weapon. Each discovery is a direct conversation with the past, mediated by the soil itself. The enduring mystery that still captivates many archaeologists and metallurgists revolves around the secret to the exceptional sharpness and edge retention of some Roman blades. Was it a specific type of steel, a unique quenching method, or perhaps a secret tempering process? While much has been learned, some nuances still elude modern understanding, adding to the allure of these ancient discoveries. You can almost feel the weight of that unsolved puzzle as you look at a perfectly preserved Roman blade. So, the gladius, buried for centuries, is now being brought back into the light. Each fragment, each complete blade, helps us piece together the larger mosaic of Roman history, offering tangible proof of their military might, their technological prowess, and the daily lives of the soldiers who wielded these terrible secrets. It's a journey from the battlefield to the display case, a testament to enduring power of history hidden beneath our feet. You're no longer in the dusty silence of an archaeological dig. Instead, you're in the vibrant, sometimes distorted, landscape of modern media. The gladius, unearthed from centuries of slumber, has been reimagined, repainted, and represented in countless films, video games, novels, and television shows. But this popular portrayal often holds a secret of its own, a romanticized, often inaccurate, vision that shapes our collective understanding of this ancient weapon. Imagine sitting in a darkened movie theater, popcorn in hand, watching a historical epic. The hero, perhaps a defiant gladiator or a stoic legionary, draws his gladius. It gleams under the cinematic lights, often far more polished and ornate than its historical counterpart. The battles are often stylized, full of dramatic flourishes and prolonged duels, where the gladius is wielded with an elegance that would likely have gotten a real Roman soldier killed in short order. This is the gladius of Hollywood, a formidable, almost mythical blade. Think about the sheer number of times you've seen a gladius in popular culture. From Gladiator and Spartacus to countless video games like Assassin's Creed or Rice Son of Rome. The image of the short Roman sword is ubiquitous. It's instantly recognizable, a shorthand for ancient Rome and all its martial glory. But this ubiquity often comes at the cost of historical accuracy. The realities of Roman close quarters combat the brutal efficiency. The shield wall. The repeated thrusts are often replaced with more visually exciting, but less authentic swordplay. One common distortion is the gladius's length and size. In many portrayals, it appears larger, sometimes almost like a small longsword, to make it seem more impressive or to allow for more dramatic swings. Historically, the gladius was compact, designed for tight formations and quick, precise thrusts. The exaggerated cinematic version often sacrifices historical accuracy for visual impact. You might recall a scene where a hero is wildly slashing with a gladius, an action that would have been rare and ineffective in a real Roman battle. Another often overlooked secret is the romanticization of gladiatorial combat. While undeniably brutal, films often focus on individual heroism and prolonged duels, sometimes even portraying them as graceful ballets of death. The historical reality was often far grittier, faster, and more focused on quickly incapacitating an opponent with lethal efficiency. The gladius in the arena was a tool for survival, not a prop for a grand performance. Though performance was undeniably part of the spectacle, historians still debate the extent of mercy and specific rules in gladiatorial games, often finding the cinematic versions to be highly dramatized. The gladius in popular culture also frequently ignores the standardization and mass production that defined its historical use. While some historical gladii were indeed finely crafted, the vast majority were workhorse weapons, churned out in large numbers to equip entire legions, films, and games. However, often present them as unique, personalized blades, sometimes even with fantastical properties. This elevates the individual weapon beyond its historical context as a part of a larger, disciplined military machine. Consider the sound design in movies and games. The metallic shing of a sword being drawn, the resonant clash of steel on steel, these are often exaggerated for dramatic effect. While real swords certainly made noise, the sounds in media are often amplified and stylized to enhance the immersion and excitement. You can almost hear the familiar cinematic sounds, distinct from the more muted, clinking reality of historical combat. The enduring popularity of the gladius in modern media is a testament to its powerful symbolism. It represents a bygone era of disciplined warfare, of imperial might, and of individual bravery in the face of overwhelming odds. It taps into our fascination with ancient Rome and its martial prowess. Even if the historical details are fuzzy, the image resonates. One compelling, yet often unacknowledged, reason for its persistent presence is its visual distinctiveness. Unlike many other ancient swords, the gladius has a unique, instantly recognizable profile. It's short, broad, and iconic, making it easy to portray and remember, even for audiences with limited historical knowledge. This visual shorthand makes it a powerful storytelling element. So, while the gladius continues to be a staple of our historical imagination, its portrayal in popular culture often serves entertainment rather than strict accuracy. It is a reimagined weapon, imbued with cinematic drama and heroic flair. It's a powerful reminder that the secrets of history are not just hidden in dusty tombs, but also in the way we choose to remember and represent the past, often through the gleaming, idealized blade of the Roman gladius. You're no longer in the bustling world of modern media or the silent embrace of an archaeological site. Instead, you're drifting through the vast, echoing chambers of history itself. The sounds fade, the images blur, and all that remains is the profound resonance of an object that, for centuries, shaped the destiny of an empire. The gladius, this humble short sword, whispers its final secrets, not of steel or blood, but of legacy and enduring impact. Imagine the countless hands that gripped a gladius over nearly 5 centuries of Roman dominance. From the sun-baked plains of Spain to the misty forests of Britannia, from the sands of Egypt to the frozen Danube, the gladius was there. It was the constant companion of the legionary, the silent partner in Rome's relentless expansion. It's a physical embodiment of discipline, pragmatism, and the sheer, unyielding will of the Roman people to conquer and control. Feel the echoes of those unseen hands, the determination, the fear, the triumph. The gladius wasn't a weapon of individual glory, it was a weapon of collective might. It speaks of the cohesion of the Roman legion, the impenetrable shield wall, and the disciplined, relentless advance that broke the will of countless enemies. It's a testament to the idea that sometimes, the most effective tool is not the most elaborate, but the most perfectly suited to its purpose. The legacy of the gladius extends far beyond its literal use. It became a powerful symbol, etched into the collective consciousness of the Roman world, and, subsequently, ours. It represents the very essence of Roman military power, the Pax Romana, often forged at the point of this blade. It signifies order imposed through strength, civilization spread through conquest. Even today, the image of the Roman legionary with his gladius is an instant shorthand for martial prowess and ancient authority, one compelling, yet often overlooked aspect of its legacy is its role in the standardization of warfare. The Roman military machine, with the gladius at its core, exemplified efficient, disciplined, and standardized combat. This approach profoundly influenced later military thinking, setting a precedent for professional armies and systematic training. The Gladius was a product of this system, and it also helped to perpetuate it. Historians still debate the extent to which Roman military efficiency, epitomized by the gladius and legionary tactics, influenced later European armies. But its profound impact is undeniable. Think about how the gladius shaped the very landscape of Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Every city founded, every road built, every border established by Rome often had a gladius in its shadow. It was the instrument that literally carved out an empire, making it a silent, yet powerful, co-architect of Western civilization as we know it. Its short, deadly thrusts opened pathways for laws, languages, and cultures to spread. The whispers of the blade also remind us of the incredible human stories associated with it. The young recruit, nervously gripping his first gladius. The grizzled veteran, its hilt worn smooth in his calloused hand. The gladiator, clutching it in a desperate fight for survival. The emperor, perhaps, symbolically touching its polished surface. Each blade held countless untold stories, fears, hopes, and triumphs. It was an extension of humanity in its most brutal, yet often most courageous, form. And even though the gladius eventually yielded to the longer Spatha, its design principles, its emphasis on balance, durability, and effectiveness continued to influence weapon design for centuries. Its simple, functional elegance speaks volumes about Roman engineering and their pragmatic approach to problem-solving. It wasn't about flash, it was about getting the job done, efficiently and reliably. The mystery that continues to intrigue researchers today is the full extent of the gladius's psychological impact on both its wielder and its enemy. Was its compactness reassuring in tight formations? Did its brutal efficiency break morale more effectively than a longer, slashing blade? The true depth of its psychological terror and reassurance, while often alluded to, remains a topic of ongoing academic discussion. Shrouded in the mists of time, you can almost feel the tension in the air as the gladius, an instrument of fear and resolve, was brought to bear. So, as we bring our journey to a close, reflect on the enduring legacy of the Roman gladius. It wasn't just a piece of metal, it was the embodiment of an empire, a symbol of a relentless military machine, and a silent witness to countless lives lived and lost. Its story is intertwined with the very fabric of Roman history, whispering tales of power, conquest, and the brutal efficiency that forged a world